Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday morning to you all. Hope everyone is doing well out there this morning and having a great start to your Wednesday and a great week out there so far. So we're about halfway through it, hump day, so getting a little bit closer to that weekend. Here to give you some updated information on what's going to happen weather-wise for your Wednesday. We'll speak on that. Not a whole lot to speak on. There is the first of many storm systems that's already entering the western U.S. So we'll kind of speak heavily on that for today, and we'll even go into our Thursday, even a little bit into our Friday morning for you folks out west. And then we'll give you updated information on this storm system of interest for later this week and really into early next week for areas of the southeast especially, and even the mid-Atlantic. Well, this thing is just kind of hanging on by a thread, but it's still hanging on, and it continues to sort of throw bones back to us, like this says, hey, you need to still pay attention to me because I could potentially do something tricky here. And I'm speaking of this system that we thought had a chance to really be something decent for our folks pretty far to the south. Over the last few days, things have trended worse for winter weather, but this is a complex setup, and we'll talk about why, and it could do something tricky for certain areas in the mid-Atlantic, maybe the southeast. So we're going to speak on that, continue to try to figure that one out. We still got 6 days or so before it is really impacting anybody. So we'll continue to kind of discuss that. And then we'll talk a little bit about how I'm watching a bigger system that could enter early next week for the western U.S. So won't speak a whole lot on that, but we'll provide a little bit of detailed information about what the GFS is saying. And to round this video off, we'll give you updated information on the long range guidance showing a substantial pattern change as we enter the mid-February timeframe that I really think has legs. Has legs as in I really have some high confidence that this is going to happen, and I think this will be something that's discussed a lot more here in the coming days. So if you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it, and if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling. So we got some moisture in the Carolinas moving out of Virginia, produced some wet snowflakes for certain areas of Virginia. Not a big storyline. Seems like back in the day, these Clipper, which this is what this is, sort of a Clipper system, Northern Stream Energy, would produce a lot more snow than they typically do, but such a warm pattern right now that there really wasn't a whole lot of cold air to feed this. So just a chilly rain across the Carolinas, a little bit of moisture trying to ooze into sections of New Mexico. Not a big deal, but the first of many waves of moisture has began across sections of the western U.S., the Pacific Northwest, and Northern California, and eventually you folks in Central and Southern California will start to see a lot of rain, also higher elevation snow. The middle of the country continues to be pretty quiet. Same with pretty much the deep south, the mid-south, the Great Lakes region. You folks are pretty quiet out there this morning. Storm Prediction Center, there is a risk for some thunderstorms along the California coastline. So nothing severe expected, but you never know. But that's really the only area of the lower 48 that could see thunderstorms today. That area also could see a chance for flash flooding. There's a pretty large slight risk, which basically covers, I would say, almost 75% of the California coastline, all the way up to a very small section of southwest Oregon. So this yellow means you have a 15% risk of flash flood guidance being exceeded within 25 miles at any given point. So please be aware of flooding San Francisco, almost all the way down to LA. But I think LA will become, and San Diego will become a bigger storyline as we get into tomorrow. Watches, warnings, and advisories. You can tell it's starting to get active out west as the first of many storm systems begin to move in. The pink is winter storm warnings. I was wrong about the blizzard warnings. Looks like they just kind of upgraded things to winter storm warnings instead of blizzard warnings. But you got flood watches up in the green. You got high wind warnings in this sort of mustard yellow color right here. Some winter weather advisories, even winter storm warnings up in Nevada. Winter weather advisories in Nevada. Same thing with Utah. And then we have some winter storm watches up for areas of like southwest Colorado. Still dealing with some fog out there. It's been a common theme, especially over this portion of the country over the last 7 days or so. So the eastern U.S., it's pretty quiet. Southeast today, really the only storyline is this rain we're seeing out there this morning. This will continue to sort of drift almost southeastward and then develop into a stronger low off the coast of the southeast mid-Atlantic. So we'll be dealing with these pesky kind of cool showers throughout the morning, afternoon hours, all the way to the South Carolina coastline. By the time I think we're into this evening, maybe some lingering sprinkles, but I really think by the time the sun sets, most of the Carolinas will be in the clear, and certainly everybody back west also is not really going to experience any kind of weather today. You know, we get into the overnight hours all the way into our Thursday morning. Pretty quiet period of weather for the most part. The Northeast, also quiet. A little bit of lingering snow showers is possible in the higher elevations of West Virginia. And then we start to get into the afternoon, start to get into this evening. And then we start to get into Thursday morning. And I do think some wintry weather will start to enter like northern Maine and then the far northern sections of just New England, the Northeast region. And then I think tomorrow morning, early afternoon, we could get some light to moderate snow that flies through a good section of Maine. But I mean, it's still above average up here, so you might get a little bit of snow shower activity into your Thursday up here with a little bit of some energy that's diving down. This is kind of the beginning stages of our 50-50 low that we've been talking about that's going to try to drive cold air into the system that's going to move in to the later portion of this coming weekend. So I think that this is going to be a common theme up here in the Northeast through the next several days, just kind of waves of moisture, you know, depending on your elevation. It could be rain, could be snow. South central U.S., you know, we get into this afternoon. Could get some showers down in southwest Texas. Same thing with New Mexico. You know, they could drift all the way into central Texas overnight tonight. Little weak system. You see the low right there. Very weak system. And then we were waking up for our first morning of February and pretty much just dealing with a little bit of light shower activity in western Oklahoma and northern Texas, maybe southern sections of Kansas. Not a big deal at all weather-wise. Now, north central U.S., going through the morning hours, the afternoon hours, nothing. Evening hours, overnight hours, just very calm weather. You know, I was talking to some people on social media about the incredibly weak, I guess you would say, winter in the Minneapolis region, just Minnesota in general, about how you guys have just had a non-existent winter. And the more I think about it, the more mind-blowing it is. You know, I don't even think Minneapolis has seen. I saw, this is what I saw. It was the statistic. I can't talk this morning. Showing that Nashville, Tennessee has actually received a few tenths more snow than Minneapolis. So, you know, that's wild. I know Nashville got it all off that one storm for the most part, but it's wild to think that, you know, a state so far south, a city so far south has seen more snow than a city so far north this deep into winter. It's pretty wild to think about. For your last day of January out here in the western U.S., a lot of rain. It's going to continue to chug on through from the Pacific. And it's going to get really heavy. And this is where we could get some thunderstorms in Northern California early this afternoon around midday. I mean, it looks like you almost have a line of storms moving into the Northern California coastline. I need to memorize some towns and cities in Northern California. It seems like we've been talking about you guys a lot more lately. But this will continue, and you notice it begins to take over the central California coastline, and it's getting closer to the southern California coastline. Higher elevation snow up in the Sierra Nevada. You got to get way up there, though. And by the time we're getting into the overnight hours, it begins to rain in San Diego, LA, and then you're going to wake up to a rainy start for your Thursday morning for sure. And then after that, just kind of rounds of rain, you know, into our Thursday. All this moisture begins to get into the Rockies, and this is sort of the beginnings of our storm system that we're eventually going to watch that slowly churns across the southern tier of the lower 48. But, you know, higher elevation snow in these areas, lower elevation rain. You know, Phoenix is going to get some rain off this later tomorrow afternoon. And then we'll take it all the way out to about the middle of the night to about late evening tomorrow evening. And we still just have rounds of rain entering the west coastline out here. So rainfall between now and Friday morning, you know, this is just precipitation, I would say. I need to be better about, you know, correcting that. But, you know, valleys, not as much, you know, just rain shadowed from the higher elevations on both sides of you. But definitely some soggy times still. And, you know, you look at snow, folks, this really tells you how warm this system is. Looks like snow levels are dropping a little bit compared to what we've seen over the last couple of days. But, I mean, you got to get way up there, folks, to see any appreciable snowfall totals. Down here to California, a lot of precipitation. I think a lot of this down here in the southern sections of California really falls after today. So, you know, a few inches of rain is possible. An inch and a half's rain. You could get a lot more, could get less in San Diego. LA, kind of the same thing. You know, an inch and a half, 2 inches of rain. More rain, certainly, up into the Northern California region. As far as snow, you take a look at the Sierra Nevada. I mean, they're going to get pasted with heavy, heavy snow, feet of snow. But even in the higher elevations of Nevada, certainly going to get it. I'll take a more broad look at the Rockies. Let's get down here to the Rockies frame. And there's the snow starting to add up in some of those higher peaks of the Rockies. So, I mean, even down here in New Mexico, when you look at, Arizona, Phoenix is not a state, Arizona, you're starting to get some snow accumulations up here. And we'll even look at precipitation in the southwest. And there it is. I mean, that's going to, a half an inch of rain is a good bit of rain in Phoenix. So for you guys as standards. But you notice this is still moving in. We go on and take it all the way to like Saturday morning, and precipitation begins to move into Colorado, places like that. So winds are going to be a big deal. That's why we got high wind warnings. It's going to be gusty. I mean, this is going to be a windstorm combined with this too. So, I mean, winds are going to gust, especially in these higher elevations, 50, 60 miles per hour. But I mean, even tucked up against the coast, 35, 45 mile per hour wind gusts are possible with this, and especially with these embedded lines of storms that kind of sweep out the Pacific into the west coast, into the California coastline. So please be aware of that. Be mindful of that. Definitely just a classic strong Pacific storm moving in. Temperatures today, all these cooler temperatures are really influenced by this clipper kind of diving in. So a chilly day across the Ohio Valley, the Great Lakes region. But I mean, I wouldn't even consider this chilly for you folks as standards. The UP of Michigan, for the last day of January, someone's going to hit 50 degrees a day. Based off the HRRR model, it's going to hit 50 degrees a day in Minneapolis. I mean, that's you potentially could break your record high temperature in Minneapolis by like 10 degrees today, and maybe tomorrow. It's just unreal to think about, but here we are. Eastern U.S. Very, I wouldn't say very chilly, but it's chilly across the southeast. Kind of typical, kind of late January, early February conditions. A tick above average in the northeast, but still a chilly day. And then we move out west. I mean, look how warm it is for the entire state of Texas. All 70s, just about 70s all the way into Oklahoma, 60s. You're getting all the way up into the 60s into Montana, all the way up. Someone's going to hit 60 degrees, getting the low 60s in Canada. And I mean, Phoenix could flirt with 80 today. Very nice day out before all the rain moves in. Enjoy your day before this rain moves in like San Diego, LA, Las Vegas, and Phoenix, all these places. Definitely enjoy your day because it's going to get soggy as we get into tomorrow. But moving forward here, let's give you an update on our late weekend, early next week storm system. That storm system we've been watching from like February 4th, 5th, and 6th, right? I think it's going to be more so closer to the 6th, but it could begin around the 4th and 5th for certain areas for sure. Let's take a look at the European. So there's not going to be anything flashing on these latest updates here. European, this moves in. This is getting the Sunday evening. You got rain moving into pretty much taking over the entire deep south. It's a weird looking system, and most upper level lows are very odd looking. They just can do some wacky things. We get into Monday morning. If you look really closely, you got a little blue showing up in the mountain, basically the southern Alps, just a little bit in these higher elevations. Looks like the Smokies. But as you can tell, it shows all rain in, the Carolinas, this area that we've been really watching like a hawk for any kind of winter weather. And, it continues. We're getting into, Monday evening, still dealing with rain. It's what happens when we get into Tuesday, the 6th, that's really kind of getting everybody a little bit kind of interested in what could happen. We got a 996 low right off the coastline of Hilton Head, South Carolina, Savannah. And we got rain. We got cold air trying to catch up with this precipitation. On the Euro, it's still warm, though. This is the back-end precipitation we're watching from anywhere from Georgia, the Carolinas, all the way up to Virginia. I mean, I would dub this a pretty low chance of happening, but you got to watch. You got to watch this. So that's the latest Euro. Not a lot of cold air, not much of anything. What about the latest GFS? Here it comes. Same looking kind of system, right? Not a whole lot different. Monday morning, a little bit of rain. Moving into Georgia, South Carolina. Never even makes it to the mountains of North Carolina, Tennessee. You got this weird looking 986 millibar low. It's a very strong low, but a lack of precipitation, so it looks very weird to me. But if you notice that 540 line right here, colder air, just think of these blue lines as colder air. It's crashing in a lot faster than the European. And here it is. It's trying to catch up. There it is. You got cold air catching up fast, and you still got moisture in the eastern Carolinas all the way back to Georgia. And then what's interesting to me on the latest GFS is you almost have, and this is going to be very complex to figure out as far as the dominant pieces of energy. Is there going to be multiple pieces of energy embedded in this upper level low? What's it going to be? But what looks like happens to me on the GFS is another piece of energy sort of dives down into this and sort of refeeds the western expansion of this precipitation here. And then you got plenty of cold air diving down. So what does this do? There's enough precipitation on the cold side of the storm to deliver some snow all the way into like the southern Maryland region, southeast of Virginia, all the way into extreme northeast North Carolina. And it's very close. Cold air catching in. You got some more precipitation sort of kind of getting thrown back into North Carolina. And I mean, it continues. You go all the way to Wednesday morning, like a week from today. It just seems like we keep backing this storm up. And it looks like it's trying to snow almost in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And then this heads on out. And what's wild is, I mean, you can see it, off, let's see. Look at this. I mean, you can see that little slither, right? It's just there. It's barely there. And so it's something we need to watch. And the Canadian, now, I've said this many times because I've had a couple comments, and I knew I was going to have comments. I knew it was going to come. When you see this, please don't tell everybody and their cousins, brothers, uncle, grandma that it's going to snow. The Canadian model says it's going to snow, and then it spreads like a wildfire. I'm showing you the boom scenario of this setup. And this is what the Canadian did. Canadian, it's all rain at first. Comes into February 5th, Monday. Next Monday, you got a little bit of ice, which is kind of weird showing up here. Precipitation is much further north. And then you get this weird kind of redevelopment of a low right into here. And then it starts snowing very heavily next Tuesday morning. And then all of a sudden, Tuesday morning, cold air catches up with the precipitation very fast. I mean, all the way down to South Carolina. And all of a sudden, you're getting heavy, wet snow across North Carolina, South Carolina. I mean, all the way down to Charleston, South Carolina. It's snowing all the way down to the coastline by the time you get into Wednesday morning. It's because cold air catches up with this. And of course, that run does dump several inches of snow in the eastern Carolinas. So that's the boom setup with this. Why does the Canadian show this? I can only really think of really one true reason. And we'll start this off with what we're looking at here. And we're going to look at this a little bit differently than what we've been showing, which is the ridging and the troughing, the lower pressure, higher pressure. This is just energy in the atmosphere. So this, if we back it up a little bit, this is Sunday, February 4th. There's our big, large upper low moving in. That is our 50-50 low with energy sort of pinwheeling around this low. You can see it literally pinwheeling, like spinning around, right? So what happens with the Canadian model, let me make sure I am talking about the Canadian model. Yes, this is the Canadian model. What happens with the Canadian is these pieces of energy begin to flirt with one another, begin to phase somewhat. As you can tell, they almost touch each other right here and start literally just trying to phase their energy. Now, this main energy kind of gets on out of here. It's almost like you have another secondary energy. It sort of dives down in here to this upper low. And all of a sudden, you get sort of the redevelopment of another low right into like here. And by then, the cold air, which has been lagging, is able to catch up with this. And I know this, to most of the people in the audience, this just looks like a bunch of slashes of yellows and orange. But that little bit of combination and phasing together is enough to really develop another low, throw back some precipitation, the cold air that's diving down, that's got pulled down because of this kind of energy that's gotten going up here in the Northeast, Atlantic Canada. So cold air has been yanked down because of this low. And remember, the flow around these lows kind of go like this, right? So this, and I'm just using this area of energy right here as an example. So this is actually helping to get yanked, cold air get yanked down into what looks like a storm system right in here. So that's why the Canadian shows that. All right, let's get this back off your screen. Let's keep rocking and rolling. What about the GFS? GFS kind of does the same thing. There's your main energy right here. There's your 50-50 low here. Another area of energy sort of branches off from this, then starts kind of, like I said, like flirting with this. They try to start to phase together. And that's why it's looking like this storm system ain't going to do anything. And then you have an additional area of energy right here that gets going. And that's why, if you look really closely, and we can actually do this on the fly here. If you look really closely, you see this area of stripe of yellow and orange, that's why precipitation gets thrown into, extreme eastern North Carolina, eastern Virginia. It kind of develops, there's your main upper low, and then here comes some energy that dives down to this, pulls down some cold air, and then you got something going on right here. So, it's something to watch. It really is. Now, we can look at the GFS too and see, the European too, and see why it doesn't do anything. Here comes the upper low, kind of diving down here, and there's no energy at all up here for it to tag along with. Nothing. It just is kind of lonely out there and kind of drifts away into oblivion. So you kind of see the difference here, right? And let's kind of take a broad look at this. You can see a substantial difference. Here's the euro screeching through, right? There's no connection. There's no energy pinwheeling around this like 50-50 low right here, connecting with this. No injection of cold air whatsoever. Something to watch. And that is your most non-wintry scenario right there. So if we look at the snow signal from this, the European ensemble is very weak. Very, very weak. It throws a little bit of a signal in the mountains, but there's just no combination of energy. And you look at, what is it, the GFS ensemble from overnight. From this morning, actually. And this is what it shows. It shows a little bit more of a signal in North Carolina. You even got a signal still in central South Carolina, all the way to Myrtle Beach, all the way to the eastern sections of North Carolina, all the way into the Delmarva region, southeast Virginia. So it kind of, throws the ball into that scenario with another low developing. And then you got the Canadian model, and, it's just not much. So I guess if you're asking Mitch, me personally, how much do I buy this? Well, I would say I don't buy it right now as far as the energy connecting, but I've seen crazier things happen. I think it's definitely something we need to watch because this system is still so far out. It feels like we've been saying it's a week out for a week. But let's go on and move forward. And I want to mention this briefly. There's no point in getting super detailed on it because it's still pretty far out. But as we are moving into the later portion of this weekend, I would say Sunday we start to see the impacts of this. There's a chance for a very strong Pacific storm to impact, even stronger than the one we're seeing right now over the next couple of days, to impact out west. And this one could be a big one. And I want to watch this. You got a sub 980 low at one point, and this sort of spinning around, then it sort of gets thrown into California. And the thing is this thing looks like it almost gets trapped out here and continues just to throw waves of moisture into California. So, I want to watch for snow levels to drop. When you start to see some blues show up, just outside the higher elevations of LA, you got some cold air involved. So it's something we need to watch. This could, develop into a flooding situation for California, these folks out west. So I want to watch that system. Okay. So let's move through. Let's move on. The last little bit of this is we'll talk about the long range. Guys, the overnight model guidance have done nothing but just stamp down that a significant pattern change is coming. And we'll start off by, we know after, I would say, the early portion of February, there's going to be a period of above average temperatures. A ridge is going to build, but it's a moving ridge. It's not like a La Nina where we have a ridge it's kind of just entrenched into the area for several weeks at a time. This is a moving pattern, and you can see it by looking at the European ensemble. And here it is by the time we're in like the February 12th, 13th frame, you can see the ridging is moving on out. The blue is troughing, storminess, coldness, just areas of low pressure. And you see this blue line, think of that as the jet. All right, and watch as we get into about the mid-month time frame, the 14th, the 15th. Look at this look right here. This is a beauty, okay? Let's get that back off your screen. You got a tall ridge building over areas of the Pacific, over the western U.S. You got a dip in the jet that goes like this all the way down to here. And, we don't know if this, the lows are going to track down here. They're going to track up here. We don't know all that yet. We just know that this is a high-end signal for storminess and coldness. And one thing that I'm seeing that's going to really feed this cold air is there's no big cold air coming from like northwest Canada. This is coming straight from the Arctic. You got a negative NAO up here too. You got blocking up here. And look at this blue connecting up here to the Arctic. We call this a cross-polar flow. So this is feeding This air idea, this is cold air feeding into an active storm track into the eastern U.S., folks. I'm telling you, if you think winter's over, I mean, you're in for a rude awakening. I do. I know there's a lot of doomsday people out there. It's just like, this winter sucks. It's not going to do anything. Well, I really do think you're in for a surprise. And, you look at the latest GFS ensemble, which, this is still running. So I don't know if it's going to take us to the point where we want it to be. But, we'll take it as far out as it'll go. And we can already see it happening as we are getting into like next weekend. You see the lower pressure beginning to shift. And then we can this is as far out as we can go right here because it's still running. This run is still running. But you can see the beginning stages of it getting going. In fact, we'll go on and flip it to the OOZ and kind of finish this. In fact, the O6Z looks even better. It's faster with this. And there it is. There's that epic pattern that I think is going to be in place for the GFS ensemble. And it's the same thing. But incredible ensemble agreement on this. That's why I think this has legs. I really do. I've been talking about the death on social media. I pretty much am all in on it, because so if I'm wrong, I know people are going to let me have it. But man, this is the strongest signal for a significant pattern change by mid-February that I've ever seen, in my personal opinion. And the same thing, the Canadian ensemble, it's the same, folks. I mean, there it is. Textbook pattern for a major winter storm across the eastern U.S. So does that mean a winter storm for the southeast? I don't know. I'm not sure. But I know if you live in the mid-Atlantic, the northeast, you can say the best of winter, depending on if you like winter weather, or the worst of winter, if you don't like it, is yet to come, depending on, your perspective. So I think it's coming regardless. And, you look at some of the long-range model guidance, like the GFS, you're already starting to see hints on it, even on the long-range model guidance. And there it is. You get... Starts off with one large system that could cut. And this is not a forecast, but there's a big system and then cold air oozes behind it. And when you see the 540 lines flattening out like that far south with energy starting to build, like for example, if this run was to keep going, you would have a winter storm all the way into the southeast, but it doesn't. And this goes all the way out to the 15th to the 14th. And, this is the run from last night on the GFS. It shows the same evolution. Cold air dropping down. There it is. First wave. And then there's one large system that gets going. Now, of course, we're going to have wild flips in the long range. So we're just showing you this. What I like to do is I like to look at the ensembles, see the pattern change, and then I compare it with the operational run of the GFS and see if we start to see what I call fantasy runs that match up with the pattern that's to come. And certainly we're already seeing it. And there's one right there. It looks like a big winter storm for certain areas, and it moves on out, and then cold air to follow. So buckle up, folks. I really think that we'll enter maybe a quiet period, like maybe for several days in February, where it's warmer than average. But at the same time, it won't be quiet for everybody. I think the West will be very active as the pattern change, begins to get going. But we got some interesting times ahead, if winter weather-wise. I really do think. That's all I got. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all, and have a fantastic Wednesday.